Hello and welcome back to the Wrestling Group. I am your host as always, Ryan, and today we're going to be looking at what a roster split for AEW could look like. Now, since the creation of AEW Collision, fans have often speculated about a roster split within AEW similar to what WWE has done in the past, which could have a set roster for Dynamite and a different set roster for Collision. So Tony Khan has been asked about the possibility of a roster split again recently during the AEW Wrestle Dream media call, and here is what he had to say on the matter. It's not a bad thought, it's an interesting thought. I have definitely considered many iterations of roster management, and I am still working on really interesting things in terms of the future of AEW media and the AEW roster. It's early to speculate on the going into the new deal and what's to come, but it's an interesting thought. I have reflected on it and I have thought of it. It's a good thought. One way or another, I have considered it. It's an interesting idea, but right now, we definitely have some very interesting things happening across the shows. It is an interesting thought, and in the future, something I would and could consider. So it would seem that if a roster split was to happen for AEW, it wouldn't be something that would be happening anytime soon. But here at the Wrestling Group, we thought it would be fun to speculate at just what that might look like. I will give you my thoughts on how it could be set up, and you can leave me yours in the comment section below. So with the current talent roster in AEW being quite large, I feel like they could actually do a roster split and be successful. It would stop us seeing some talent 2 to 3 times a week, while other talent sits at home, e.g. the likes of Ricky Starks, Wardlow, etc. This is also a list of top stars that are currently injured and will eventually return to TV. And with a roster split, it means fitting them back in won't come at a big cost to other talent, as they can be split between the two shows. The likes of Adam Cole, Kenny Omega, Adam Copeland and Samoa Joe will need to fit in somewhere when they do return. First up, we're here to look at if a roster split would happen, we would consider what to do with each of the championships that are currently in AEW. So here is what I would do with each of them. This is not going to include the Ring of Honor titles, as for me they should solely stay on Ring of Honor and not be featured on AEW television. So the AEW World Championship. As this is the main championship for the men to compete for, I would have this title on Dynamite, the flagship show. This doesn't mean that if someone is on Collision, they can never become AEW World Champion, as there could be opportunities via maybe pay-per-views, or even if you were to run an annual draft, similar to, like, say, what they've done in WWE. I would have it that if someone did win it, who was actually signed to the Collision roster, like a pay-per-view, they would then automatically sign over to Dynamite, thus keeping the title on the main show at all times. So I wouldn't have it that if the AEW World Champion was to lose to a Collision member, that the AEW World title then flips show. I would keep it solely on Dynamite. The AEW Women's World Championship. So with the Men's World Championship being on Dynamite, I'll put the Women's on Collision, so that the one brand doesn't hold both world titles. This should straight away create some interest in the Collision show and get fans tuning in weekly, as it will be the main story for the women's roster. So the TBS Championship. Well, with the women's title being on Collision, it makes sense for the other women's title in AEW to go to Dynamite, which in turn would effectively give us 2 women's divisions within the company. Also, it makes sense to have the TBS title on the show that is actually aired on TBS. The International Championship. This is one of 3 current mid-card titles that the male talent can compete for. I will put this on Collision and push it as the main title on that show, so it's either just under or even on par with the AEW World title, which would be on Dynamite. The International Championship already has a history of some of the top talents within the company holding it, so it makes the most sense of the three to be pushed to a main event status. The likes of Will Ospreay, MJF, Jon Moxley and Pac have all held the title so far. The TNT Championship. Like the TBS Championship, it would make sense for this title to be solely on the show that is shown on TNT. And that is why I will put this title on Collision. It will be the mid-card male title for that show. The Continental Championship. As the TNT Championship is going to go on to Collision, then the Continental would be the mid-card title on Dynamite. I would still in fact hold the Continental Classic each year because it was something really enjoyed by a lot of fans, but I would set up the brackets as one side being from Dynamite and one side being from Collision. And if someone from Collision was to win it, they would be signed immediately to Dynamite, same as what I said before with the world title, to be available to defend the title for the next 12 months until the next tournament. The AEW World Tag Team Championships. Being one of the two tag titles in AEW up for grabs, it doesn't really matter which show gets which set of titles. So I would just go down the route of putting the tag team titles on Dynamite, which then would put the AEW Trios tag titles onto Collision. I mean, with the tag belts, I don't think it really matters that much. You could have either or on either show, but just for this video, I would put the tag titles on Dynamite and the trios on Collision. So that is the setup of how I would have each of the championships if AEW were to eventually do a roster split. So you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The roster side of it would be an interesting one. Don't worry, I'm not about to go through and do a full roster split of who goes to which show here and now. But if it is something you are interested in seeing, then do let me know in the comment section. And if there's enough interest, then that video will be done at some point too. You could do it as like the AEW Roster Split Part 2. So with the roster split, so many things would have to be taken into account. The first would be an even split of main caliber of stars for each show. So for example, you may have the likes of Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada all on Dynamite, and then MJF, Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland all on Collision. And for the women, you could have Toni Storm, Mercedes Moné and Jamie Hayter on Dynamite, and Willow Nightingale, Mariah May and Britt Baker all on Collision. So a roster split would also give an opportunity to look at factions too. There are a decent amount of them in AEW currently, so again this would give you an opportunity to have certain factions on each show. For example, the Elite could be exclusive to Dynamite and the BCC exclusive to Collision. You could also go as far as having set announcers, commentators, referees and even backstage interviewers for each of the different shows. So a roster split for me personally could be a good thing. It would also create a lot of buzz around the company and maybe even help to improve the current viewers. For those of you that concern yourselves with that side of things for some unknown reason. It's not something I'm trying to will into existence, but it's definitely something fun to look at. Do you think a roster split should happen in AEW? If so, how would you lay it out? Would it be something similar to what I've said, especially with the titles, or would it be something completely different? Let us know in the comment section below. I am interested to see how many are in favour of it. And don't forget, as always, to give us a like, leave us a comment, and hit that subscribe button today.